Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with a special guest, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted to be joined today by Jose Carvalho, co-founder and managing partner of the Value AI Institute and global head of the Centre of Excellence at the Digital Economist. So welcome, Jose.
Thank you very much, Craig. A big pleasure for me to be here with you today.
Oh, it's fantastic to have you here. And in this episode, we're going to explore how organizations can move beyond the AI hype to build meaningful, value-driven use cases that deliver real business outcomes. So I'm really looking forward to chatting that through with you, Jose. But just before we drop into that, I'd just like to ask you, if you could spend a day shadowing anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
So I would say Nelson Mandela. And the reason I say Nelson Mandela is because I've always been very impressed with leaders that are able to deal with emotion, but not execute with emotion. And I think that Nelson Mandela is a great example of someone that had so much in his life and so many things that he could be feeling bad about. But when he actually had to be a leader, he executed very rationally, and he executed with a lot of empathy, but with a lot of rationality as well.
Oh, fantastic. I think that's a great person and figure to follow. I actually just immediately came to mind, and not because of admiration or anything like that, but Donald Trump, just to see where do some of these decisions and comments actually come from. It's just, some of them just come so far out of the field to me that I think, okay, how did we get there? But anyway, I won't go any deeper into that. I do want to travel to the States sometime in the future and don't want to be blacklisted. So just to start things off on our main topic, Jose, could you please give us a little bit of background on yourself and the Value AI Institute?
Sure, Greg. Thanks for that. So Jose Carvalho, I'm a co-founder and also managing partner of the Value AI Institute. My background goes between technology, management consultancy, also technology consultancy, executive leadership. I also worked with SAP for many years. I had a career with SAP in different roles, local here in UK, but also regional, global for 16 years. Prior to that, I've done, as I mentioned, a lot of consultancy work as a management consultant, technology consultant, and also a bit of work in banking. In my last 5 years, I've actually started looking more into the topics of thought leadership and innovation. And still within SAP, we had a venture within SAP, which was the Intelligent Enterprise Institute that looked into that. And then myself and some of my co-founders decided to actually have something outside as well. And we created the Value AI Institute. And the Value AI Institute is really a network and an organization that helps business leaders to actually create value with AI for both their organizations and society, to look a bit beyond just automation and optimization, to look about the overall value that AI can potentially bring to a business. And we also convene leaders at global events such as Davos during the World Economic Forum, also the UN General Assembly, usually in New York, Climate Week, and actually also we'll have something small coming in here in London during Climate Week as well at the end of June. The idea is really to empower board members and companies to adopt AI responsibly and strategically as well. Then I also collaborate with another think tank based in Washington, DC, which is a Digital Economist, with a role to help creating a human-centered digital economy, and obviously focusing also in AI, but also on other topics such as blockchain, such as the sustainability, policy, governance, and also an industry focus on healthcare as well. And besides that, I also support some organizations, particularly some startups in AI. So I have one particular role as an advisory board member. But everything we do really is around the topic of AI, but the topic of looking into how can we look at it holistically. I always say very often that if you want to really know about AI, you need to know about everything that goes around AI. So knowing about AI is not enough to know about AI holistically.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I'm glad I didn't ask you earlier what you do in your spare times. It sounds like you probably don't have any.
I play football. I play football, and then I recover from playing football with the injuries and with the tired muscle sets.
Oh, fantastic. You need something to blow off steam.
Indeed.
So, AI has been a huge topic for the last couple of years, especially. What do you see as the biggest misconception businesses have about AI today?
I'll start with one which is very recent, I think, and it's businesses and it's people in general, which is that AI equates to ChatGPT or generative AI, right? So AI is not just generative AI. Generative AI is actually a buzz now, and it is great because in a way, actually, I would say democratizes access to the user of technology, so it makes it much more accessible for any person really to use artificial intelligence. This is one thing, but then also I would say that there's a lot of talks, of course, and one of the key things is that AI brings automation, potential job replacement as well. But in fact, I think it's not only about that. And obviously, there is a component that is a risk there, and there's a component where if you automate business processes, there will be less for people to actually to do. But the conception that AI is only that, I think, is wrong. I think AI is actually a tool to augment us as humans as well. If we want to use it in that way, if we design it for that, it can actually create better versions of ourselves and maybe actually put ourselves, a better version of ourselves in the daily work as well, right? So this is kind of what I feel about AI. I would also say that there's another misconception that I come across very, very, very commonly, which is particular businesses that may tell me that they are not using AI. I think they are using AI. They may not know that they are using AI because their employees will be using AI. So what they will typically need to tell me is that they do not have control on what AI is being used for in their organizations. So I think AI is everywhere, right? So in our personal lives and in our business lives as well.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, even using the likes of Microsoft Office these days, you utilize an AI in that. So, there's always some form of automation somewhere to help you through work or through your personal life in lots of different ways, I feel. And, you mentioned earlier you work with boards to help them understand business value, etc., and then also right up to the heady heights of Davos, if you like, with the World Economic Forum, chairing roundtables, etc. How do you feel organizations should approach aligning AI with business value?
I think actually that's not a new concept, right? I think any transformation, particularly digital transformation that we've been going through in the years, it's all about really being able to take what are the business objectives and really try to identify what are the challenges that AI can address correctly, right? And I think that's, if you want to obtain business value of every initiative, we need to understand what are the targets that you want to achieve. You need to understand what are the things you want to change and what are the challenges and the opportunities you have within the organization. So that doesn't change with AI. I would say that the only difference that I feel, so beyond then putting structured frameworks, KPIs, and all these kind of things that drive a digital transformation, I think the only additional thing that I would actually typically recommend in order to be able to align AI to business value is really to understand, both the potential of their people and the potential of their data. So the data that a business actually creates. And if we understand those two things, then we can understand where are the pitfalls and where are the potential to actually do things differently, and where we can apply AI in order to either augment that potential or bridge the gaps that we may have. So, but I think it starts there. And very often it's not about the technology itself, right? It's not about technology, it will be there. Technology, it will evolve. but it is about taking what is the human capital knowledge of a business, what is the data knowledge, the data assets that the business actually produces, and then seeing how can AI support in augmenting that.
Oh, fantastic! The people element is quite an important one, I feel, and I hear terms such as human-centric and things like that when designing these things. Is that where we are here, making sure that the people are heavily involved and passing on their knowledge to see, where AI can help and save them to free them up to do other things?
Yes. But don't get me wrong. I don't say this because I'm trying to elevate just human aspects in the transformation. This is actually what is good for business. So I really believe that a business that focuses on just automating what a human does in order to do things faster, whilst that can be good, and obviously we always say it releases time of people to do other things, that is the part that needs to be looked at. So what are the other things that people can do? But also, how can AI support people to do those things even better, right? So for example, I give an example. Maybe I'm not the most creative person in the world. Maybe I'm very good at executing and being operational, for example. But actually, AI helps me into research, helps me into looking into thinking about things from a different perspective, trying to, for example, prepare for meetings by understanding what the stakeholders potentially could be looking at, my content, my wording, and so forth. So actually taking that and applying to people, that's actually something that is very strong. And the reason I feel this is important is because I believe that if an organization focuses on optimization and doesn't look at the potential that they have to leverage even better the human capital they have, they will, yes, succeed in the short term, but they will lose an opportunity to grow for the long term. So I really believe that if you want to use AI sustainably, then, and if you want your business to be sustainable, not just from a climate perspective, sustainable from a longevity, from a profit generation and so forth, then you need to leverage much better that human capital that you have as well.
Fantastic, thank you. While we're on that subject about short-term, long-term, etc., we see businesses maybe perhaps rushing into AI, and what potentially do you feel some businesses overlook in their haste to implement the technology?
Yeah, I guess the rush into using AI typically would lead businesses to start trying to find use cases and to just implement them, right? And very often, then they will be lacking that strategic look into how to use AI, right? So I think this is obviously a big problem for a business, almost trying to file the nail to hit the armor that they actually have with, and the armor in this case would be AI. If we don't look at it strategically and with objectives in mind, of course, you have a very big potential that you are not going to achieve what you want to achieve. You will achieve something. AI will lead you somewhere, but you have no control, right? And I think that as well, if we start looking particularly into business processes and just adopting business processes automation with AI because there's use cases that someone else is doing, first, you are actually not becoming, selling your own unique proposition to the market, but also you may actually be delegating things into the technology that you don't realize that you are delegating. And if you don't have control of that, eventually you lose skills, you lose your own ability to control the execution of your business, and you actually, and again, you lose the ability to be accountable for your own business. And I think this is very, very dangerous. I think this is kind of the biggest risk that businesses have, is about they are accountable to the markets to what they do, but if they cannot explain, they cannot actually be transparent on how they do things, then they will not be able to be to meet that accountability.
Mm-hmm. No, so I suppose when you're looking at this, then what other advice would you perhaps give to an organisation who's looking to identify meaningful and viable AI use cases?
I think, again, this I think probably looks almost as a common advice, but it is, I believe AI is strategic, so it needs to be looked at strategically, right? So we need to treat AI as a strategic organization-wide transformation. It's not just a technology project to implement use cases. So that component of, taking AI and aligning it with the business value is key. I think the other thing I mentioned about the people, and I mentioned about the data. So actually, data is a key asset here, and data readiness, the ability to understand what is the data that the business one sources from others, but also produces. I think this is something that is needs to be looked at, because what data that the business produces is actually the unique selling point that the business may have with AI. So if you as a business produce data that others don't, then you actually have something that you can leverage there, potentially have a new business model or a new revenue stream that others may not have. And then I think the other thing is, I think AI is there for the long term, right? It is not another release, right? It's not just another implementation of a new piece of software. And whilst it will lead to big transformations, I think the worst you can do is wait for those big transformations. So I think it's important to actually just start small, start getting embedded, getting it kind of having some small initiatives, understanding a bit the technology, understanding what people in the organization can do with the technology, even if it's with small objectives. But this will actually start the buzz, start the excitement, and starts as well the acceptance and adoption of AI by employees, by the different departments of the organization.
Thank you.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKI Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UKI Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
You mentioned data a little earlier, and obviously the importance of having data right. And it just reflects back on a conversation I had in a previous podcast talking about data with Chris Gorton of Synity, and he shared a quote that he'd heard elsewhere, that it was artificial intelligence without good data is artificial stupidity. So I think reflecting on that, how do you feel organisations should think about data readiness before diving into AI?
Yes, and I know Chris well. In fact, I worked with Chris in the past as well. Yes, I again, strategically, I think we've always heard this as well, that data is the new oil, and I think this is 20 years old term, I think. I really believe that AI is bringing seriousness to that statement, because I really believe that with data, the organizations do have assets that maybe others do not have. So I think there are standard things that need to be done, right, in terms of data quality, in terms of ensuring that data is governed, that we know where data comes from, so that we actually understand where data is created and so forth. I think there's another thing to add to the picture, which is about what does that data represent. So we talk about, for example, bias and so forth. So data needs to be representative of, at the end of the day, of the world, but particularly of the world that will be subject to the product that you are putting in place, right? So, and there's very good examples, particularly with CVs, right? If I use this, I think it was already 7 years ago. I remember it was one of SAP events where I mentioned this example of the CV matching, where if an organization only hires blonde people, then the matching in the future is going to be typically recommending blonde people to be hired, right? So this is obviously an extreme example. So looking into data as a serious asset, applying the typical, obviously, data quality processes around it, putting a strong governance to ensure that data actually is only accessible for those that needs to be accessible. But more than that is really kind of looking at it as a real strategic asset, making it AI ready, because we are going to be using it for training models, but also to, at the end of the day, train the bots that will execute your business. Mm-hmm. These are if you want to kind of keep that control, then you need to kind of really take it seriously.
Thank you. And so, if we're in a project, we found what we feel is a very valid business case, and we're moving forward with it, what potentially is some of the common warning signs that an AI project is maybe heading in the wrong direction?
Well, there are some good examples in the market out there. I think it was obviously with some chatbots from Microsoft, for example, where they actually became aggressive and racist. I think that's kind of a very clear case. But I think there are others. I really believe that with normal governance processes, you typically will understand when you actually have stakeholders where they will not be able to explain what the products or the initiatives that they are putting together, explain how they are getting to certain results. And that does not mean understanding everything that is behind the AI, because at the end of the day, it can become a bit of a black box. You actually have something that deals with inputs, produces outputs, and that the output is not going to be 100% correct, but you actually are going to put guardrails around it to make sure that you can cope and we can kind of accept that lack of certainty. So if you actually start seeing that you cannot explain the overall results and outcomes, that you cannot feel that you are accountable. When people start saying this is a black box, so we just need to deal with it, that's a clear warning that you should actually look into your governance. You should actually look into, okay, I don't understand the black box. I need to understand the guardrails. If I don't understand those, then something is really wrong.
Thank you. And you mentioned, one of the key elements is thinking about AI strategically. What role does leadership, business leadership, play in successful AI transformations?
Well, I think anything that is strategic obviously needs to be driven by the top. But I really believe it's about one, demonstrating not proficiency, because I think it's difficult for a leader to also become. Obviously, you have exceptions, and you have people that actually are able to be also very proficient on AI, but that they lead by example, right? They lead by example in first trying to understand that it is a literacy topic as well. So it's something that you need to get enabled on, and you need to get exposed to, and you need to start using, right? Then is actually demonstrating to the organization what are the right intentions on the use of AI. So if there's always a business purpose behind it, that is a growth-driven business purpose, that gives a lot of enthusiasm as well for everyone in the organization, because they are in a growing pattern. If we just have the look into the operational efficiency, then typically it also raises eyebrows on people, and people would be concerned about that. So, but I think as a business leader, if you actually take, learning, knowledge sharing, and execution as your three key pillars for the implementation of AI, I think that's kind of where people follow you and be able to kind of not just follow, but actually be a catalyst and be contributors for your strategy execution.
Thank you. While we're on the subject of learning and knowledge sharing that you mentioned there, I mean, I'm really looking forward to your keynote at our AI symposium coming up in July. So looking forward to seeing you there and hearing what you have to say. So if any of our listeners are interested, the link to the event will be in the show notes, or just visit www.sapusers.org. But back to our conversation, Josie, after that little advert. Are there any particular industries or functions where you're seeing the most traction with AI right now?
Sure. And by the way, I'm actually also looking forward to being there in July. So thanks a lot for the invite.
You're welcome.
It is really becoming ubiquitous across different industries, right? I do have a couple of favorites, or maybe three that I would like to mention. Obviously, healthcare is one. I think in terms of I do see a lot, and particularly a lot of us SMEs, a lot of startups and SMEs that actually try to make a difference within healthcare. In particularly, if I look at the US, where I work quite a bit these days as well. And trying to actually to bring much more innovation to healthcare in order to actually make it also more accessible for people. We talk about diagnostics, being X-ray, being cancer. Actually, SAP as well has been working with quite a lot of organizations, particularly on the cancer screening. My times I remember that. personalized medicine. So maybe helping that transition of healthcare being a problem of the cost center, but actually being personalized to individuals. So we see a lot of AI being deployed there. One interesting one that I feel is about agriculture as well. And maybe there's a lot of different aspects. And you talk about precision agriculture, prediction of the best yield of the fields, monitoring of the crops and so forth. What I find it very interesting with the agriculture is because is AI actually bringing the ability to make a sustainable business, right? And in agriculture, there's a clear use case there. And then the third I would like to mention, probably more surprisingly, maybe it is on the finance and banking. And the reason I mention this is that, obviously we talk about fraud detection. We talk about, for example, trading, predictions, and so forth. What I like about finance and banking is because it's such a regulated industry that I actually believe that whatever is done with AI in finance and banking is there for the long term. So it's actually going to be there not just for the quick wins, but actually done properly. And this is kind of why I actually always like to mention finance and banking as a clear example where things will actually move with certainty.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And what's your view on the rise of low-code and no-code tools for AI? I mean, are they a great opportunity for people with limited coding skills or whatever to really get involved? Or do you feel there may be an oversimplification that might cause problems further down the line?
I think it's probably both. I think I mentioned in the beginning about the democratization of access to technology. So I really think that in this, particularly with generative AI and the ability of people actually to have access to technology, also includes the fact that you as a functional leader, for example, can potentially develop and test code, right? This is something that is really a game changer. I believe that democratization is great. I think that the fact that actually you can actually start producing things based on your actually non-functional requirement. And I've been a developer in the past. The key challenge very often was for developers to understand what was the business requirement, right? And for it to actually be fully documented and so forth. And somehow you break a bit that challenge by having functional experts also being able to create code. The big risk is for sure the adoption of those outputs without the proper governance, right? Again, if I go back when I was first a developer and then an architect, code promotion, code validation, code testing, the process was the process, and you would not go into putting code into production without going through the process. And I think that does not change, right? That needs to remain. Again, you can also use AI for the testing itself as well, but you need still to have that governance. So the governance in terms of how you deal with the technology and how you use it and how you feel that you can vouch for the output of AI, that remains, and that needs to be there.
Thank you. And looking to the future now, what's perhaps one area of AI that you're personally most excited and perhaps also concerned about?
Personally, I mentioned about the creativity. I really believe that nowadays AI can make, and this as an example, those that are not creative more creative, meaning as well that it can also give structure to those that do not have structure. So in a nutshell, I think the fact that AI can actually really augment us as human beings and as professionals, I think that is very exciting. And the reason it is exciting is because it will actually highlight as well the diversity. People can actually focus on the things that they are good at and can actually augment the things that they are not so good at. But everyone can do that. And I think that brings diversity of perspectives, diversity of approaches to business, which can actually be quite interesting. In terms of what scares me, I think, and I'm going to get a bit more philosophical, I think, less business. I think it's we are trying to mimic in AI as much as we can what we are as humans, right? We are trying to, for example, even create conscious AI systems, right? I'm not afraid of that, but what we find about ourselves in trying to do that, what we find about the consciousness of human beings in trying to do that, that's an outcome that I'm not so sure what it will be, and I think that's the area of interest, I'll say.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And so we've talked about quite a number of things, and as we come towards a close now, some of the things that you've mentioned are thinking strategically about AI that I've certainly picked up on. People are important, and thinking about those people. Data, very important, and keeping control seem to be some key areas that we've discussed. So just reflecting on that, if you could give one piece of advice to an IT or business leader thinking about AI in 2025, what would it be?
Difficult to put all of that into one single advice, I would say. I would say that it's about the collaboration, not being afraid of the collaboration. And the reason I say that is that a lot of people will be using AI in different ways. And I think that the first thing that is important is for us to be aware of that, to be aware of what people are actually doing, so that we can actually take some perspective out of it and some inspiration, so that we can then define what we do with it ourselves. So I think it's really about, so my advice would be, know what's happening out there, know what's happening outside of your organization, try to understand the strength of your own organization, and collaboratively do something about it.
Curiosity. Always remain curious. I think that is a key thing. And Jose, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your insights. I really do appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Craig. It was a really absolute pleasure talking to you again. So very glad that I was here today.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss our future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and be curious.